Bruce Klingner, a senior research fellow for Northeast Asia with the Heritage Foundation, joins us now live from Washington. Bruce, good to speak to you. What do you make of that op-ed, and particularly the assumption that Victor Cha didn't get the job because he disagreed with the idea of a preemptive strike?
Well, if Victor's nomination was derailed because he privately provided policy guidance, then that's troubling. But his op-ed article, I thought, was right on the money. Many of the Korea watchers, most of the Korea watchers here in Washington, are arguing against a preventive attack. We don't think it's the right policy option. And it's based on concern that there are advocates, both within the administration and outside, who are pushing for that option. So there are a long list of reasons why we think it's not the right option, that we should maintain the current pressure policy along with deterrence and containment and long-term regime change, along with information operations and confronting North Korea on its human rights violations.
But what does it mean? Because we're getting a clear idea of what the thought process is in the White House. Because again, he says, I sympathize with the hope espoused by some Trump officials that a military strike would shock Pyongyang into appreciating U.S. strength. We're seeing a number of times, particularly by this op-ed, the indication that the U.S. is very clearly and seriously thinking of trying to take out something in North Korea, and the implications of that you and him have warned against.
Right. And I was in South Korea a couple weeks ago and met with senior officials, and they expressed very real concern that the administration was considering such an option. And then in private and public conversations with others in town, there certainly is an advocacy by some for such a policy. And they have not yet defined what targets they would be going for. Would it be a few targets, the so-called bloody nose that some articles have referred to, 2 or 3 targets to send a signal, or would it be a broader targeting list that would more likely undermine the ICBM program, but also more likely cause an all-out conflict?
And tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people's lives in the region at risk. So just also to go back to the issue of Victor Cha, now not in the running. He was the expected nominee for the ambassadorship of South Korea. The South Koreans were waiting eagerly for that post to be filled because they have been having trouble trying to communicate with the U.S. government. The State Department is also pretty gutted. So what does that mean? Is that an indication, again, of a failure of diplomacy, that ambassadorship, like many other, I think we've got a map to show just how many ambassadorships have not been taken up, key allies. Is that important, particularly with this case, or is the ambassador just, a figurehead? How important is this?
It is very important. We have an extremely capable deputy chief of mission in South Korea right now. But when I was in Seoul, again, officials commented that, by not having an official ambassador, an official representative of the president, with the gravitas of a presidential appointee, that, as some of the officials said, the U.S. is losing ground, including to China. So, particularly at a time when the situation on the peninsula is, I think, closer to potential war than at any time since 1994, you need all the players on the field. So, we have, as I said, the extremely capable embassy officials, State Department officials, and others who are there. But you need the gravitas of an ambassador. It's not only a signal, but someone who more clearly can articulate with a greater weight the words of the president and the policies of the president.
Do the South Koreans feel like they're not able to communicate, that they've been sidelined, that they've been abandoned, perhaps also overtaken by Japan when it comes to diplomacy? I mean, what are the South Koreans, in terms of the actual government, trying to do when they're trying to communicate with this administration?
Right. Well, there are many lanes in the road of communication, both officially between the South Korean government and the U.S. government, and lots of, kind of behind-the-scenes conversations, including by think tankers and other experts. So there's a lot of communication. Certainly the two militaries are coordinating very closely, not only on whether there's a potential option for preventive attack, but the upcoming military exercises that are pre-scheduled, as well as the existing plans to deal with any kind of North North Korean attack or provocation. There's a great coordination between the White House and the Blue House, their presidential office, and State Department officials certainly are conferring. So there's a lot of communication, but you really do want a full team out on the field.
That's an excellent point. Thank you. Bruce Klingner, as always, good to speak to you and get your perspective. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks.